Okay, so I'm going to give a quick little overview here of a model I built for better understanding training to help better guide training, and it's a predictive model, and I feel it is an improvement upon the information that Training Peaks provides. But I am taking the information Training Peaks provides and then putting it into this um, model. So first off, my big question was before I go into what any of this means. I'm going to jump over here so I don't distract you. My big question was, what is peaking? Um, and my hypothesis is that if coaches truly know what peaking is, then their athletes would always peak. And if coaches were to be able to use accurate predictive modeling, they would be able to advise their athletes what races not to do or back out of, how hard to go during races, and accurately explain why races did not go well and subsequently improve retention rate. Right now, the state of coaching is that retention is very challenging, and it seems like coaches get selected because they're hot and because other top athletes are working with them and not typically for any other reason. I personally have worked for coaches I will not name that have been reported as being highly analytical. And when I worked with them, I was not given access to that analytical thinking. And even though maybe they were doing it in the background, confidence was not instilled in me. And that's an issue. A coach should be instilling confidence, in my opinion. Um, so the other thing is I hear a lot of coaches saying that coaching is an art. Well, I like art, but if you have to paint the same painting 100 times, you need to understand the underlying factors to make sure that painting is replicable, so that painting looks identical each time you do it. Or if you do change certain elements, you have reasoning for doing so, and you can empirically, whether that's qualitative or quantitative, empirically assess and describe the um, the underlying factors clearly, concisely, and repeatedly. So one thing I did is I jumped over and in a very detailed manner, I calculated the TSS estimated using. I've communicated with Arthur Lydiard in the past, and so I understood the details of his specific workouts. And I have emails capturing some of that communication, and some of it was handwritten. But I went through and used Training Peaks training calculator to calculate the TSS for individual workouts, and as it ramps up and as it remains the same. And this is a Lydiard training plan. And what I really wanted to understand was this: is what is peaking in a Lydiard plan? Because peaking in a Lydiard plan is really, really predictable. It's what's used by a lot of top high school teams. It's what's used by a lot of top college teams. A lot of top marathoners and half marathoners. It is just it's a 4 to 6 month program, and it just tends to work really well. And just jumping to the beef here, what I found, and I decided to model a bunch of different training programs as well, but I'm not going to go into that. What I found is right here that a overtraining indicator of roughly 0.64, 0.65 is ideal for absolute peak performance and working towards that. So that gets us to that. Now let's understand what the heck is this overtraining indicator. So I'm going to go ahead and jump back to the other spreadsheet here, and ATL over CTL. This is obviously not my idea. I saw Jordan Rapp write about it on Slow Twitch, and what he said is that ratio should be kept under 1.5. The argument is that TSB, which is the difference between CTL and ATL, it's not a ratio. So you can have someone with a CTL of 50 or someone with 250, And the differences between their CTL and ATL are going to be drastically different. You're going to have some people like Friel and others say that for peaking, you really want to be around positive 25, for example, TSB for peaking. Well, if it's like if your take home pay is $500,000 a year versus $50,000 a year, a steady rent of 2,500 is going to have much different meaning in those contexts. So you need to be using a ratio. I think it's the same thing here. TSB is not necessarily helpful, and I chart that over here. And actually, this red line is TSB. So what I have over here is this is that ratio. And you can see what's going on here is I kept the, we'll call it the overtraining indicator, this ATL over CTL. I kept it right under 1.5. Here's 1.5 for a continued period of time. This is CTL, so you see fitness increasing at an exponential rate. You see form dropping in unison with fitness, but form TSB is quite a bit divergent from this ratio. My experience and other people's experience is that this ATL over CTL is very indicative of perceived exhaustion and just perceived effort and just perceived state. Going over 1.5 will often and most likely lead to sickness or injury. So if I'm leaving this right under 1.5, that's going to ensure that I avoid that. Whereas you can see form just keeps dropping down, and you'll have some people say, well, maybe this form is getting too low, but that's not actually correlating very well with perceived exhaustion. So that's why I'm using this instead. So what I decided to do is I really wanted to understand is like, okay, so I explained how a Lydiard plan works with like a 4 to 6 month program, typically 6 months, 26 weeks. And when I look at ITU athletes who are just consistently peaking month after month after month after month, that was confusing to me. I wanted to understand empirically and quantitatively, how are they doing that? So what I did is I built a model to help me understand it. What I found is that I can keep my ATL over CTL at a consistent number. So you see here, I'm keeping it kind of high, 1.848, 1.46. I should note that a 100th of a decimal place in this ratio makes a pretty big difference. I will say I am keeping this pretty high, and it might be wise to drop it down below 1.46. From my experience, I can maintain that, but I'm going to play with it. And in the past, I have. But what I wanted to try to do was really push the limit here and test myself and see how quickly I can ramp up fitness here. So when I keep things kind of at the brink here, where let me take a step back and show you what I've done. So I'm going to scroll down right here. I have a planned ATL CTL. So these are just static numbers here I've just inputted. But what I've done then is I have a RX, so a prescribed total TSS. So this is a pretty long formula. Let me actually go up so you can see that formula. And so you can see when I'm clicked right here, here's this formula. And what this is doing is saying, okay, based off of previous ATL, CTL, and my planned ratio overtraining indicator, this is, if I want to hit 1.48 this day, my total TSS for the entire day needs to be 98. So what does that mean? If I have swimming at 75, strength at 20, and those are fixed, then my calculated running is only 3. Well, obviously that's not, very wise. So I could come in here and change that to 60, for example. And what you'll see is this goes up to 18. Now these are really low. This is an example of showing someone like myself coming off pretty low fitness right now, and I'm using this to keep me from overtraining. Now 18 is a 15-minute run, jog, and most people wouldn't be satisfied with that. Well, this is keeping me on track. But you'll see as I go along here, this this quickly starts ramping up. I can jump down here to like week 12. Well, now I'm at 1260 total TSS for the week. Now I'm at 9. I'm swimming 4 times a week. My running has gotten, pretty high, is getting higher. My cycling is getting higher. And so what these are then is I have, based off of my prescribed total TSS, and my cycling is also prescribed. And I say, well, I have a fixed swimming, a fixed strength workout, and this is what my cycling is going to be for the day, 61. So, and as I go along, I just manually input the actual, so it gets rid of this equation. And if it's lower or higher, it subsequently updates. So I'll give you an example. Let's say I actually only did 30 this day. Well, now you'll see that the next day's run just changed. Now I'm going to go back to what it was, and you'll see this changes again. So I go back, and this goes back down to 85. So this keeps me on track no matter what. So now you understand that. I want to go back over now to this chart. So this is what I really want to focus on here now. So by using a fixed overtraining indicator and sticking to that, my fitness is going to increase exponentially. But I'm going to hit a certain point where, it's only humanly possible to go so far. So if I scroll down here, for example, you'll see I hit 1398 per week, and I'll go here. So here's the last week I used this formula, and I hit 1916 per week. Well, this is where I tell myself, okay, that's as much of an exponential ramp up as I want to do. So now I'm just going to set things at 1985. And what you're going to see is that these overtraining indicating numbers start to really drop. Let's go back and get a visual of that. So here we are. So I peak for the St. George Triathlon. Now I'm going to go ahead and just and I do one more week of fixed. That's why this overtraining indicator line is just steady. Now I say I'm going to keep my weekly training load the same. Well, what happens is because the training load is the same, the overtraining indicator starts to drop quite a bit, and you'll see the form starts coming up. But this starts dropping quite a bit. So in this case, form is a little bit more relevant, but you can see on a daily basis, they don't mirror each other exactly. And again, perceived exhaustion correlates much better to this number. So now I have, instead of exponentially increasing, I have a curvilinear response here. Fitness is still increasing, but it's flattening out at the top. Why is that important? Well, let's get back to the original topic, which is peaking. Well, when I'm doing this sort of exponential ramp-up training, it takes me 2 to 3 weeks to get to that 0.65 overtraining ratio, that indicator, to get down to 0.65 for me to be able to be in peak shape. When I start using this curvilinear result, well, I can peak within a week. I can go from my 1,985 TSS week and drop it down and within 6 days and hit 0.65 indicator and hit that peak fitness much better. Now I'm better able to understand what the ITU guys are doing quantitatively, and I can try to replicate that and hit my peak performance. So that's how this works. Okay, if you have any questions, let me know.